Welcome guys, and here we are again for another standard deck tech with the Bloomburrow set. And as we explore now with the recent tournament results posted, especially on the MTG Goldfish and MTG Top 8 websites, we see some new variants of decks, mostly has adopted the tribal kind of setup for the Bloomburrow set that has been introduced. And for today's deck tech kind of, we go to explore this version of what they call as the Dimir rats or the blue black rats. It was piloted by Darvendas. It is from first place for the major Magic the Gathering tournament, in which we see its list. It's more of a kind of a temple rat tribal kind of setup, which of course has very much more of the value that is aligned for the current metagame of the standard format. So we take a look at the slide up. We have 18 creatures, 2 enchantments, 2 sorcery, 1 planeswalker with Lilian of the Veil, 14 instants, 23 lands, and 15 cards sideboard. So we're going to take on the setup of the cards for the creatures. We drop down this lineup. We have 18, so mostly of the rat setup with the tribal. Goes first with the 2 drops in the form of Azure Beastbinder and the Persistent Marstalker. So I'm going to go first with the Beastbinder. Its ability that it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or greater. It is also a 1/3 vigilance. That means that it can also attack and do damage while also going to defend whenever your opponent attacks with their 1/1s and their 2/1s. But this important thing is that whenever Beastbinder attacks, up to 1 target artifact, creature, or planeswalker opponent controls loses all abilities until your next turn. And then if it's a creature, it also has a base power toughness of 2/2 until your next turn. So very effective to garner on those big creatures by your opponents, and at the same time it can't having this one that can't be blocked with power 2 greater makes sure that this ability would really have you to continuously disable a certain artifact, creature, or planeswalker of your opponent's side. So this is 4 copies in the deck, which makes it very important also. Now the other 2 drop for this build is that this one with the Persistent Marstalker that gets +0/+0 for each other rat you control on your board. It has a bonus also that if you reach threshold, you have attack with 1 or more rats. This would have this trigger to have you pay 3 on option. If you do, return it Marstalker from the graveyard to the battlefield, tap and attacking. So early on can just become a 2 drop for 3/1 that gets bigger with the power, but can also trade off with your opponent's board or your bigger creature from your opponent. And later on, if you have threshold, you can just pay 3 to have this one attack and return from your graveyard to the battlefield. So very good early attacker and also a late game potential recurring creature. Now for your 3 drops, we can divide here with copies of legendary rat creatures in the form of Caramonix, the Rat King, and Lord Skeeter, Sewer King. So Caramonix here would get you to have your toxic creatures and also have your other rats you control have toxic 1. And then enter the battlefield, you drop 5 to your library and reveal a number of rat cards from among them, and then put it in your hand and put the rest in the bottom in order. At the same time, gets you to somewhat reinforce your hands with your rat cards in a number of rat cards at that setup, and also give them a toxic 1. Now for Lord Skeeter, I've seen this before. It's a very efficient attacker per se, back in the Golgari aggro days of setup, that whenever a rat enters the battlefield under your control, you can exile up to 1 target rat card from your opponent's graveyard. At the same time, it can be able to create an army of 1/1 black rat creature tokens with this ability that this creature cannot block. But the important thing is that creating this army of rats would also benefit you to have your Persistent Marstalker pump. At the same time, also have the ability to get those rat tokens have toxic 1 in case that would need the toxic ability as your main or your alternate win condition. Now for the 4-drop, which you can see here as that of Brenda Relentless. So this is the version. This is probably the most expensive version or the frame of this card. It has this ability that it is a 3/4 with ward 2, but if a creature upon control would die, exile it instead, and then you can get to create this X11 black rat creature tokens with this ability that this creature gets +1 for each other rat you control, and then the X would depend on the number of creatures your opponents controlled that were exiled this turn. So in a way, this goes well with several of your spot removals. Those removals with the destroy effects would get them to exile these creatures. At the same time, you'll also create this token that can be added to your board, to your army, and also gets you to benefit and prevent those graveyard shenanigans from your opponent. Now let's take a look at the enchantments. We have here not only a enchantment but a pseudo spot removal per se with 2 copies of Virtue Persistence. This -3 -3 is not very efficient here in the setup, and also recurring creature card from graveyard would also gets you a good late game approach and strategy. And for your instance, of course, in cost of several bounce spells and counter spells, of course, 3 steps ahead, 3 copies of Phantom Interference that can also create tokens with the spree effect, spot removals with Go for the Throat, that's 3 copies, and Cut Down, that's also 3 copies. And do take note that with this ability of the Beastbinder, it can have the creature 2/2, which means it can be able to satisfy the cut down condition to destroy it with the total power toughness 5 or less. And the new card also Into the Flood mode, which can bounce off an opponent's creature, and if the gift was given, you can bounce off an land permanent instead. So giving a tough fish or 1/1 fish creature would not really that of the drawback against them, as if you will be able to bounce off a relevant non-land permanent, or for example a planeswalker, and that you can be bounced to get you a good advantage to your board. Now for your lands, we have here, that's 23 lands composed of several mana fix that is still legal and standard. Of course, basic lands are also included with swamp and island, and 2 Cavern of Souls were also considered here to make sure that your tokens would resolve to your opponent's counter spells. And of course, Liliana of the Veil would also have you as an additional discard effect, and also spot removal with the sacrifice effects, and can be useful in certain situations where your opponents would have some relevant creatures with Shroud or Hexproof, and use Liana only to sacrifice them. And those 2 main deck Malicious Eclipse would be the call to your answer to tokens deck, since Boros tokens would still be really an efficient deck archetype in the format. Then having this one main deck would also have you a way to deal with their army early on in the pre-sideboarded games, and having also your opponent's creatures exiled instead of dying and putting into the graveyard. And last but not the least, we check on the sideboard. You see here that it's very efficient way to just deal with the creatures, opponents control deck archetypes, and just go on with the planeswalker route in the mid game or the mid-range matchups. So let's take a look as what or other answer to your opponent's aggro setup is your copies of Glistening Deluge. This are also efficient against white and green creatures. Additional Malicious Eclipse that can also kill off -2/-2 against most aggro in the metagame. Then we have also a copy of Seasons of Loss. This would also have sacrifice effects with this ability, and you can also draw a card for each creature you control that dies this turn, and can also have this one as effect as a way for you to win by having your opponent lose X life where extra number of creature cards in your graveyard. And for the mid-range, we can see that variants of creatures can be used against them. For example, we can also use Binder to fend off an efficient triggered or activated ability. Maha could also be a good way to have your opponent's creatures have the base toughness of 1. At the same time, we can also have a 6/5 flying trampler threat, and this can also work well with the Malicious Eclipse ability to have the -2/-2 effect with having the base toughness 1. And of course, Duress would go with the mid-range and the control, since having to discard a relevant card, which is a non-creature, non-land card from your opponent, would also have you to do a game plan against them in your succeeding turns if you know their remaining hand or after discarding their best cards from their hand. And also knowing Vermin, it's also a rat for say, but can also be efficient against having to trade off against creatures that probably a 2/2 or another 1/1, because it can have this 1/1/1 draw end of turn. And for the example of the Jace, so Jace here would be get you to have an effects of the drawing card or fixing your hand. At the same time, you may exile a non card from your mana value from your hand, and it becomes platted, and have this ability that whenever you cast spell, you can copy it and choose new targets for the copy. So at any instance, you can also use this one for late game setup in post sideboarded games, as well as using Lena of the Veil as an added sideboard against those kind of matchups. So I think that's pretty much it for this deck. Let's check on the average mana value. Let's see that it's this deal at an average of 2.41. It's very efficient with the mana fix. It can probably do a good curve early on with the mana value extra for counter spells or bounce spells and spot removals. At the same time, core distribution here, it's more on the black with 36 and 15 only for blue, but the producer is pretty much even each. And let's take a look at the tokens that we can use. We have a copy token, fish token for the gift effect, rat token from a Lord Skeeter, and also another rat produced by Bren. So Bren here would have this very efficient creature token that can get you to pump for each other that you control, and also a spirit token that is produced by the counterspell Phantom Interference. So I think that's pretty much it, guys, for this deck. So we have again Dimir Rats by Nervendas for your standard deck tech for Bloomburrow set. And if you try this one or have played against this in your daily grinds on maybe on MTG Arena or MTG Online, just let me know in the comments, as we can have a good discussion on this. We might be able to improve some of these cards lineup, maybe add more rats in the main deck, or cut off some of these spot removals, or even Liana can be used in sideboard. Just let me know in the comments, as we can have a good discussion on how to improve this deck build. So that's pretty much it for now. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and notifications on, and see you guys on the next deck tech.